loaded. I live better than a king. I don't need a thing. I've got a puppy and I've got a car, and I've got friends and love in my heart, and I've got the Constitution. Hell yeah! I live better than a king ever did. I live better than a king. Oh, I don't need a thing.
Welcome to Freedom Junkie Radio. Today I have Krisztina Dean with me, and Krisztina is a healer. She's an intuitive writer, an intentional healer, an insightful life coach, specializing in helping others navigate through life experiences and past traumas by dissecting the origins. Once they can see clearly, she creates a plan with them to construct their ideal reality while supporting them along their journey. But this is the part that I'm really excited about. Krisztina is also a powerhouse free birther, having had 4 beautiful unassisted home births. Each birth had its own signature energy and vibrational field specific to the child's journey and mother's transformation. Welcome, Krisztina.
Thank you so much for having me, Betsy. I'm so thankful to be here and speak to you and share my journey.
Well, home birth for me is one of the hallmarks of my life. It transformed me as a person, and it empowered me as a woman, and I wanted to share that with everyone so much. I wrote a book about it called Birthright, which I'll put in the show notes and people can read it. It was my gift to the world of people who don't know anything about it, because like 97 or 98% of women give birth in the hospital and don't even consider the idea of doing it at home. And it's one of my favorite things I ever did. And so I knew I wanted to bring somebody on and interview them just to get more of this exposure to that freedom that you have. You don't have to go to the hospital and experience that sterile being poked and told what to do and all that. You don't have to. You can have a beautiful experience at home the way that humans did it forever. And then I met you. And you blew my mind, because I thought I was on the cutting edge of birth by doing it at home. And I thought that was so edgy and fearless and amazing. And then I had a healing experience with you, and we were talking about home birth, and you said, well, I did 4 unassisted home births. And that blew I didn't realize I was in a box. I didn't know you could do that. So before I let you talk, I've got to say one more thing. I had a latent desire to have an unassisted birth with my second. And I didn't tell anyone because I thought you couldn't say that. This is why you're blowing me away so much.
So you secretly wanted to do this?
I secretly wanted to know what it was like to give birth like a walrus or a horse or, like a mammal.
Yeah.
And not have anyone there telling me what to do and what not to do. I secretly wanted that. And I didn't know that I could express that, because I thought people would be like, that's dangerous and you can't do that.
They do say that.
Right. So I want to learn all about this. But it happened. My midwife missed my second birth.
Wow.
And we did have technically an unassisted home birth unintentionally. And it went great. And that was awesome. So.
Did she come in at the end, or did you actually have him already?
He was there. She
Wow.
came in. She made it for the placenta. So that was helpful.
Yep.
I want to know, firstly, what do you think gave you the fearlessness and the idea and the courage to want to do unassisted home birth?
I've always lived outside of the box. Since I was a little girl. Anything that felt like it was supposed to be, or the way that everybody treated life, this is normal, this is how you should act, and this is how you should be, and you should, I always tested those limits even as a kid. And when I got pregnant, I did not want to be pregnant, which this is obviously a different direction, but I had never thought of the idea of, you're going to get pregnant and then you're going to do an unassisted birth, or you're going to, you're going to do a home birth, or I never even had a thought in my head prior to seeing that stick saying you're pregnant. about how I wanted to have a baby. So I've thought about this a lot because I never had sort of that thought process of, okay, we're trying to get pregnant, and when I get pregnant, I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. So going back to how I always lived outside the box, even as a child and then as a teen, and I never felt like I fit in, period. But when my mom died at age 16, I made a commitment to myself that I would, specifically in the the environment of doctors and hospitals and things like that, that I would find ways to naturally heal myself. So if something happened to me in my life, I would figure out a way to naturally heal those things. So when my mom passed away and going on this journey of self-healing and self-discovery and sort of understanding how not to fit into this box of having to go to a hospital when something is off or when something is wrong, or, then when I had found out I was pregnant, my husband looked at me and we were just kind of looking at each other. He's like, you said you didn't want kids. You said you don't. And the first thing I said to him is, I have to be at peace with this. And by the way, we're going to do a home birth, completely unassisted, just the two of us. I had no idea what that was. I didn't understand it. I didn't hear anybody say that ever in my entire life. I was a C-section birth. So, and my mom had, these terrible birthing experiences. And so when I said that to him, he was just like, oh, okay. He's very progressive in that way also. And he just kind of looked at me, okay, that we can do that. We'll figure that out. We'll make it work. We'll see how to do this.
How old were you?
24.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 24. So, and my mom passed when I was 16, and then I went on that journey of figuring out, how do you naturally heal yourself? What do you put in your body? How do you treat your mind? How do you treat your being to keep yourself centered and balanced? So, and it started off as a way to be healthy and to kind of be proactive of any potential issues coming up. And, I was thinking ahead because, I was thinking, okay, if something ever happens to me, how am I going to prepare for it? And that thought process sort of led me to, it was kind of backwards, because looking back now, I don't want to go to a hospital because my mom spent most of her life in the hospital. Or most of my life in the hospital. So when I was born, she spent a ton of time in the hospital. So there was this energy around, how can you do things without going into that, stepping into that system? And so I realized after I had Jaden, which was my first, that a part of why I, choosing to go on that journey after my mom died and then finding out I was pregnant, a part of it was just simply, I didn't want anything to do. There was a resistance, anything to do with hospitals or anything to do with that system, that I felt like there was a better way.
Well, I think that's a reason why people choose home birth anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I never would have thought of having a home birth until I witnessed a home birth.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law invited us to her birth, and it was one of the most amazing moments and days of my life because my entire paradigm shifted. I thought you gave birth in the hospital, and that's what most people think. And the idea that, it was so calm and so peaceful, and the house was dark with candles, and there was pretty music, and there were these nice women walking around, and it was not crazy like in the movies.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't like hospitals either. I'm not going to go to a hospital unless I'm about to die and they need to save me. And thank God they're there for the 7% of home births that need to transport. So that need to go to the hospital for some reason or another. Something might not be going right, and otherwise, so there's a fear of hospitals, I think.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, give birth where you feel the least fear.
Yes.
And for me, that was definitely at home.
Yeah.
But I was 25 minutes from a hospital, and so I had this, okay, if something goes wrong, we might not be able to get there in time. And I was okay with that risk as opposed to the risks that there are in a hospital.
I personally had no plan B. My husband told me he did, but I did not. I I knew that this is what I was going to do, and that was sort of it. There was this determination and focus, and particularly with the first one, we had never done it, and I had never even heard about it. And then when I started researching it, it was, okay, there's a couple people. Literally, I found a woman who had an orgasmic birth, and that was the one woman who I had found who did this free birthing thing. She called it free birthing. I mean, I didn't even know what it was called. It's not, there was no sort of, oh, yeah, that's what some people do. Because, you have that frame of reference of, okay, hospital births, there's C-sections, there is epidurals, you have these frames of references, okay, home births, okay.
And there's natural childbirth in the hospital.
Exactly. And I didn't even know you could have a baby in the water. And so then when I had seen a couple of people online, I literally think it was 2 at the time that I had found. And one was orgasmic, and another one was just talking about, she was in Hawaii with mammals in the ocean, and then came out and just gave birth right there on the beach. And it was incredible. I thought, wow, how can I do that? Exactly. But then that I went, okay, yeah, there's some logistics there that you have to deal with.
Okay, was there any fear?
No, there was no fear. When I made the decision, absolutely no fear. When I stepped into childbirth, during my pregnancy, no fear, just clarity. And then I stepped into the childbirth process, and where you start to get those, I like to call them sensations of energy versus that idea that you're contracting. Like when you feel that, it feels like this, not like, and that feels more expansive, more of a release versus something that's restricting
contraction.
You. Yeah,
more of a expansion.
So when I went into that process, the moment I had fear was when it was 11 hours in, and it's like, okay, is this ever going to happen? There was a slight moment of fear, and I looked at my husband and I went, is there an emergency midwife line? And he kind of looks at me, no, that doesn't exist. There's a hospital. It's like, okay, I'm going to keep going. And so I shifted. Okay, we're going to go now.
You really gave birth like women did forever. Now, there have been midwives, and I'll tell you what, knowing she was there when I had questions, she left us alone for the most part until we needed her and felt, knowing she was there was such I felt like it was a security to me, but I don't know, I'm so fascinated by what she did.
There was, my husband was very supportive. I don't think I could have chose, even logistically, I wanted to birth in the water. So you had to buy a pool. There was all these little logistical things you needed to do. I mean, we were in an apartment. I mean, you have this beautiful space here out in the country. We were not in this kind of setting. We were in a small apartment in LA, like a box with neighbors right next door to you. So there was no freedom.
I walked around outside and hung from tree limbs and
yeah, I mean, it wasn't like that, right? I had to create a box inside of this box that felt comfortable for me. So yes, I did the candles, the dim lighting, the kind of the music. I had whales playing in the background and ocean sounds, and we were really close to the ocean. We couldn't hear the ocean, so I was like, I need to hear the ocean. I need to feel the mammals in the ocean, because that one video kind of put in my head that was a sort of perfect idea scenario. And if it wasn't for him, my husband, I don't know if I couldn't have chose it in the same way, I don't think. I mean, I probably could have found a way to do it, but he handled the logistics. I wasn't, at least particularly with the first one. I mean, the third one, there was a funny moment of me putting the pool together and filling the tub with water, and he's sleeping. It's 1 a.m. I'm going to go to sleep for an hour while you're doing what you're doing. But then I was like, okay, it's coming. Let's go. It was very organic that way, though. It was organic in the sense that we just sort of flowed each birth. I listened to my heart. I listened to the baby speak to me inside. We would communicate, And the baby would be like, okay, yeah, this feels good. This does, like, I could sense it based on how my body was reacting to the things I was choosing.
You trust your intuition more than most people I know. And I think that if you weren't in tune with yourself and trusting your intuition, it would be pretty difficult to make that decision.
I mean, if I didn't have a meditation practice prior to making this choice, if I didn't have the awareness of you can create your own reality, if I didn't have the awareness of, you know, being in my body and choosing what my body does and connecting my body to my emotions, to my heart, clearing my chakras, all these things that I learned, I don't feel I would have been as comfortable making that choice.
Well, and you mentioned your husband had to be a part of it, and it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do a home birth if one of you isn't on board.
No.
Sometimes some husbands want it and the wife doesn't, you know,
Yeah.
or the father and mother, I should say. You both had to be completely on board for this, and whatever it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And it turns out you had 4 beautiful births. Tell us about some of the births.
So Jaden was my first. So first off, just before I say anything about the births, they were all transformative experiences for me. And I treated them that way. From the moment of inception, when this baby, you know, got formed inside of me, it, you know, came together and there was life created, to the moment the baby was in my arms, that whole process was this 9-10 month transformational process that was miraculous. Each of them had their own sort of points of growth, revelations, you know, moments of darkness, moments of light, all of it. So Jaden was probably in many ways my most transformative. It was the most transformative period of time in my life, I would say. I went from being a girl, from being this, you know, this girl who didn't want kids, didn't understand what that meant, wanted to take care of all the other babies in the world, just wasn't sure if she wanted her own, and to giving birth and being this mother suddenly, you know,
Maiden, mother,
a woman,
yeah,
you know,
maiden to mother, and does alchemize you.
Especially I was young. I mean, young for this day and age. Like, I mean, 24, turning 25 very soon at that time, and that birth was long. And I did have that moment of being scared. I mean, it was the first time we had done it, and it was sort of, okay, we're doing this, and I could feel, and there was one thing I didn't know logistically, that if I knew, and I was so focused on being comfortable that I wasn't tuning into my intuition. And I know that's what happened. It's like, I just want to be in this warm bath when the contraction comes. I don't want to move. You know, and at that time it was about, okay, this feels like a contraction. This doesn't feel like a sort of this energy flowing in, and this sensation of energy going over my body. At that time, when I was the first time, I'm like, you know, and so it was long, and it took maybe 14 hours total from beginning to end. And there were those moments of being scared. But when I made the choice to have him, I mean, and I pushed once, pushed twice, it was instant. I mean, there was maybe a minute from the first push to seeing him, you know, and having him in my arms. And that's kind of how I operate my life, is when you make a choice, you focus and you become determined, and that's what it takes in this scenario. You're focused, you're determined. This is how it's going to be, and this is it, you know, and you're going to tune into your body. You're going to tune into your intuition. You are going to be led and you are going to be guided, period. There's no room for chatter. There's no room for anything else. This is life or death. And, you know, it's like, boom, you're doing this. And so once I had Jaden, then Galen, my second, she spoke to me a lot. She made me go, I mean, she not made me, but told me, we need to leave where we are and go to another state. I was 9 months pregnant. And we had to set up a whole new birthing plan where we were. Boom, boom, this, and we put everything together. And she came out, I had an orgasmic birth with her, which was still just to this day, one of those things, did that really happen? I mean, it was, and when you say orgasmic birth, people are almost like confused by it in a way, like what do you like orgasmic, or and yeah, like literally there was this sensation that came over you. It wasn't pain, it was like it was incredible. And she came out, and she was about a 4-hour sort of ordeal, from beginning to end. And it was romantic. My husband and I had like this romantic sexual experience. Like, I mean, it was such a beautiful, and it seems so out there, right? Now you're having this romantic experience during your birth. No, we really were,
Well, and if no one's around, I could see that.
It was perfect,
Yeah,
and my son was sleeping because it was like the middle of the night, and he was sleeping. We were birthing, making love, having babies, and so it was. And then the third, Bella, was, I wanted her, she spoke to me in this way of, this Amazonian kind of goddess sort of, I felt like all I needed to do was move during that birth. You needed to move, and that was the theme. You moved, and she came so quickly. I mean, it was 2 hours from start to finish. I mean, I don't even remember having contractions very much. She just, okay, I'm ready to come. I started dancing around. Okay, the tub's there. Boom, go in, baby, come out. And, that was a funny one, though, too. We had chose to go to a hotel because I needed to be by the ocean. Bella was telling me, I need to be by the ocean. You need to be by the ocean. Okay. So we got a hotel for 2 weeks right by the ocean. And we had support with our other kids. And, we set up this tub. And I was making the most outrageous noises. Like I was literally in the Amazon. Like, it was just like, well, I am not in a hotel with people surrounding me. I am outside in the wilderness with animals. But there was a security guard that came because there was a complaint about a noise, and I'm just pretending, nothing, everything's okay, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry for all the noise, and just went back into it, and went into, right after that I kind of felt, okay, she's coming, went into the tub, and it was just this very sort of calm and relaxing experience with her. And then Aubrey was by far my hardest birth.
The fourth one.
Yeah. Hardest emotionally. All of the other ones came when I didn't go to the doctor, so I didn't have a due date necessarily, but I knew when my last period was, and I put in a calculator, and it was like, okay, this is the day. And they came either the day or one day after. All three of the first three. And then the fourth, Aubrey was 2 weeks late. And that was unusual. So it felt already uncomfortable and not normal to what I had created and experienced with the others. And then it was as if I couldn't, my body wasn't sort of allowing it. There was this, she wanted to stay in there. She kept telling me, please let me be. Like every time I went into meditation, there was a let me be scenario. And so I honored that. I mean, if you go past a week, 2 weeks, you are getting sliced open or induced, one or the other, to get this baby out, because they're overcooked sort of thing. It's like, it's too much. You got to get her out.
Yeah, I don't believe in that.
But but that's I had friends who were pretty into natural remedies, natural solutions, even birthing in some ways. Like, are you okay? Is the baby okay? Like this, the baby needs to, and projections when you're pregnant, don't even get me started. But, and then choosing something like this became, you had to be certain. And so Aubrey was late, came My water broke, which was unusual as well, because I'd never had my water break first. And then I started bleeding, and then discharge. I mean, there was discharge, blood, all these things I didn't understand or fully could grasp. And then I went back into, okay, what do I want? I'm getting out of creation and into scarcity. I am scared now. I am so scared. And my husband looked at me and said, are you okay if this baby dies? Whew. Am I okay if this baby dies? Are you okay if you die? Well, what do you mean? Well, you're getting to a point where we need to make a choice. And I was in so much fear. And so I wasn't being led. When you're in fear, your intuition, you're at odds with it. You're operating through a different lens. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I got to pull a card. And I had these cards that I pulled for guidance sometimes when I just felt lost. Mm-hmm. Pulled a card, and it was Archangel Gabriel, and my husband's name's Gabriel. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and our eyes kind of locked, and there was that certainty that came back. The certainty, mm-hmm. the knowingness, the decision, then this is it. And I didn't even answer him. I just said, I have to start walking. I kept walking back and forth, back and forth. No more than 20 minutes later, I said, okay, she has to come out now. I got into the tub, and I pushed one huge fast push, looked down, saw her cord wrapped around her neck, started unraveling it, put her on my breast, and she was all good. But I lost my greater intention. I lost my focus. I lost my knowingness. I couldn't find my intuition. It was all gone.
There's a certain bravery that it takes to any birth. When a woman goes into birth, I think every woman, I'm certain, experiences some type of fear that you have to overcome, and that's part of the alchemy of motherhood. Is by overcoming fear. When we're being brave, isn't that one of the best things we ever are?
For sure.
Yeah, and how often do you get to be brave? Like hardly ever, right?
Yeah.
And so, just when even if you choose to have a C-section in the hospital, there's certain bravery, and there's always a risk. So there's all these levels again, and you take it to a whole other level of bravery, I feel like, because from the get-go, I'm gonna do this, and no matter what happens. And that's what's so amazing to me about your story, is the bravery that none of us, not even me, I don't know if I would have had it. I'm done with babies. I don't know. I would love to do that next time. And I've had people tell me that after I tell them my home birth stories. They're like, I want to have another baby. My friend who edited my book, it made her wish she could have another baby and do it at home, And so I think I'm hoping you're inspiring people to consider this. How many books did you read when you decided I'm going to do this? I mean, because you obviously educated yourself.
Yeah. So there was a book that I call the Bible to birthing and pregnancy and the moment of inception of getting pregnant even. And it was called Sacred Birthing.
Sacred Birthing. Do you remember the author's name?
Yeah, Sunni Karll.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes.
And I felt, when I read that book, I had a friend give it to me. I told her, she was a very spiritual person, very attuned, all of it. And I said, oh, I'm having this, by the way, I told very few people. That's another whole topic, but I'll finish this thought. I said, we're doing this unassisted thing, this home birthing. I don't even know what it is. I mean, this was when I had first gotten pregnant, but just letting you know, you hold great space and you're a like-minded healer. So just want to put it out there to you. And she said, oh, I have to get you this book. So she handed me the book and I read it. And I mean, it opened my mind up and blew my mind. And it was like, I don't need anything else. This is all I need to push me through. That's how I felt. I literally felt that way when I read this book. And the thing that stuck with me, it stuck with me. It was that when you're getting ready, when you're going through this process of wanting to get pregnant, and you meet someone or you don't, or it's an accident, whatever it is, but the moment of the baby, the egg and the sperm uniting, I mean, that's where it all starts, as in this baby's energetic blueprint begins. And the tone you're in, like how connected you are to that person, the type of sexual experience, I mean, it's embedded somewhat into this, and this goes deeper into a different topic that we probably don't want to get into because that'll take us off. But it's...
The sun is about to, for those of you who are listening, you won't know this, the sun is about to go right across your face. And I don't know that it matters because it's a podcast, right? People are just listening. They're not watching us.
The sun is about to...
So you're going to have the sun going across. Maybe we should stop and reposition?
Sure.
Let's do that.
All right, we're here.
Okay, so you were talking about the book that your friend...
Yeah, it was all focused on how your energy is flowing when you're pregnant and how it impacts your baby, how trauma is coming in, are you anxious, then that embeds into the baby's energy field. I mean, it was just all about the energetic dynamics of life. I mean, when if you and your husband were angry, or your partner were angry when you conceived, and what that does to the baby. I mean, this gets into some metaphysical sort of...
Typically people aren't angry when they're conceiving.
But that's an example.
I'm so mad at you.
Example. Or like if you're sad, or if you're actually orgasming versus like all the different... But it talks more about just how your frequency, your alignment, your energy, being pregnant, and how it interacts with the baby that's growing inside of you. And then when you're having the baby, so then the birthing process, then that's the other part of it is, are you in this sterile environment with all these people, with, the lights and the, all this kind of movement and taking, how fast do you get taken away from your mom, and all these things get brought up in the book. And the environment you create to birth is so sacred and so special. So whether you do choose to have a hospital birth, making sure you can create somewhat of an environment versus creating this really intense environment for the baby to come into. Could you imagine you're in this beautiful cocoon, of love, hopefully, and and you're floating around in the water. I mean, essentially
totally
that's what
safe, totally
safe.
Cared for. Yeah.
And then you come out into bright lights. Babies don't. I read this whole, and it talks about in the book. Babies do not come out and want to just cry. That's actually not natural. But a lot of babies come out and are like, you hear.
I don't think my babies cry.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you hear a lot of that, particularly, I've noticed more so in hospitals, or, where there's like the lights are coming, the baby gets ripped away and the placenta gets cut, and it's,
they get a shot.
It's like, yeah, it's a shock to their system is what it is. And this book addresses how to create a space and an environment where this baby feels so loved and so cared for, and it's a natural organic flow out from the womb out into your arms. And that just, it struck me because when I chose the free birthing, unassisted birthing, I didn't think of that until I had read the book. It wasn't really, it's not that there was a process that took place that thought of that particular situation. Having infrared lights and the water. And even I had chosen the water prior to reading the book. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this in the water. And it talks about how when the baby comes out into the water, it could be there for a few minutes, fine, underwater. It's not gonna die from being,
It's not going to drown. It's
drowned
been in fluid.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it talks about how that feels very natural to them, and how entering the world in the water sort of is a natural flow from coming out of the water. It kind of in your belly, boom, and then when you pick the baby up and how you hold the baby and how you comfort and putting it right on your chest, even if you're not choosing breastfeeding. If you are, immediately bringing it to your breast and putting it on your breast, the baby, and just bringing so much light into their energetic field.
Okay, so you were perfectly fine energetically, and this book helped you to be your intuitive nature, your energetic part of bringing a new life into this world. You were ready. What about the technical part? I'm thinking what did you know about cutting the cord to the placenta, and what did you know about if a placenta previa or if something was wrong? For me, I never went to the doctor once. Never. With one of my children. I never had an ultrasound. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, and I loved it. The surprise was so much fun. So now my midwife was checking me out throughout my entire pregnancy, just like a doctor would, and she would have noticed if something wasn't right. So even during that part, usually things go right. So your chances
usually,
your chances of having a normal birth are pretty darn good. But so that technical aspect of, did you read a book about all the things that can go wrong and what you do?
No, we did videos about all the, these videos that showed you all the right things to do and make sure things go right. So
that's just where most people, my mind went there, you know, like, okay, well, what can go wrong? Well, there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
For sure. And I had to stay out of that mostly if I was choosing this path. So my husband he understood how to cut the cord, although I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a lotus birth, but
that's when you keep the placenta,
you do, right? And you put it in and put it on ice and let it organically fall off. I tried. I really did. The smells and the discomfort with the first baby, especially, it was hard because you're just like, I want to connect. Okay, there's a But the one thing you definitely should do is all the blood that's in. So you shouldn't just cut the cord. You should allow the optimal thing, whether you're in the hospital, whether you're having a home birth, with a midwife or unassisted, whatever it is, the ideal thing to do is to make sure all the blood goes back into the baby when you eventually, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 5 minutes that the placenta comes out, and then you kind of squeeze it, put it back into the baby, all the blood.
I've never heard of that.
And you really shouldn't cut the cord. I don't really like interacting with life like that, but the optimal thing, what feels the best to the baby, if you can, to keep that placenta attached, don't cut it.
Well, what would have happened 200,000 years ago if you were a cave person?
You wouldn't have cut it.
You wouldn't have cut it.
No.
Animals apparently bite it off.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I can't get this off my baby.
Yeah.
But it would have probably had to naturally fall off.
Yes. And so you can do that. It's work, it's you got to keep it. You got to keep things right, carry it around with you. And then it's a little, they say about 5 days is the normal. It could be 3.
Kind of gross.
Kind of gross. I eat my placentas.
Yeah, I know about that. I did not. We planted a tree on our placenta. We knew about eating it, putting it in people make smoothies and they encapsulate the placenta. What does that do for you? Why do people eat their placenta?
It helps balance your hormones. It helps balance, postpartum, there's so many women who have testimonials around, I did this and I felt so much better. I didn't do it for this birth. I did, it balances out your hormones. It helps with the postpartum. It helps with even the nourishment, of what you're feeding your baby, the breast milk, everything.
It's organ meat.
Yeah.
And it's human organ meat. It's a little bit weird.
The encapsulation is the easiest way to do it, but it was in your body. It was yes, it's an organ, but
I'm thinking the cave people thought, look, we delivered a baby and a meal, our first meal. It's
yeah,
right here.
oh my goodness, that's perfect. But hopefully they give it to the mom, and not everybody else. But so my husband did watch the videos, he looked things up. I was focused on the spiritual aspect.
So he was more of the service guy,
yeah, I know how to cut the cord properly and tie it.
Well, and how to catch the baby.
No, you don't catch.
Well, you know what they call it. Yeah, it's true. You don't catch a baby. You help. You just are there.
Well, it was in the water for me.
Okay.
So for me, that wasn't a thing. I knew that it was going to be in the water. He definitely, if I had been outside of the water, he would have had a plan. He would have had plans in his head that this is how it would probably look. But I knew it was going to be in the water, so then the baby naturally falls. So that wasn't so much a concern. But yeah, the cutting the cord I found it fascinating. That was the question that people asked me after they knew that we did this, this unassisted birthing. I'm like, that's such an interesting question. That's the question. Yeah, I was like, okay.
Well, I want to ask you about that. So you didn't tell very many people you were doing this, obviously, because you didn't feel like it was a decision you had made, and you are free to make this decision.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to deal, I'm assuming you didn't want to deal with people, the naysayers.
Well, I call them projections, yes, that I did not want around me. It felt... At the time with the first birth, it was different. I'd never done it. I had no track record. This was my first baby. I mean...
People would call you crazy.
They would. And I told some people that I felt could support me. So I feel this way about most creations.
And decisions you make,
and
yes.
Yes. So when you feel... There's no... whether you make... It's a business decision, or you're starting...
If you tell the wrong people, they'll throw cold water on it.
Yeah,
right.
There's this ability, and not that it has to affect you. Some people use that as fuel. There are people who use naysaying and projections as fuel.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I don't have so much of that personality. I can override people. I more have to go, okay, I'm going to clear their energy. It's harder for me to use that as fuel.
So I've learned that in my life for sure. I don't share my new creation
Yes.
ideas with people who are going to tell me I can't do it or I shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that I don't want if someone was like, well, wait a minute, your mom had difficulty giving birth, maybe, if someone's going to help you think it through, that's different.
And I knew the people that in my heart who I could tell and who would be supportive about that decision and encourage me. And through their heart, through their guidance, through their intuition, their gut feeling, these are the things I call, these are things I'm referring to as intuition. They could tell me if they felt something was off, and I would trust them.
Well, and it was a decision you'd already made. It wasn't like you were saying, hey, what do you think about this?
No, I wasn't.
Right. And when you're already that clear on something.
So I didn't tell my dad. He was the one that I felt most guilty about. And he would have really been scared. And
because the grandparents feel like it's their baby too.
Yeah, and I mean, I said and after I had the baby, he was the first person I called, and I said, hey, so I just had this baby, all's good, but just to let you know, no one was here but me and Gabriel, and a friend of mine had walked in on that birth, but nobody was here to sort of facilitate in this birth. And he said, what are you doing? That's crazy. Yeah, and I'm sitting here, do you not want to know anything else? I mean,
but he had to process it then.
Yes, he had to process it then. And I did learn with my second birth, it was easier to tell people.
Because you were like, I got this.
I got this. I mean, there were plenty of people who was, all was okay with the first one. But how do you know you can, replicate this? And how do you know you're going to do the same thing with the second one?
Little do you know, I'm going to do it 3 more times. Okay, so if people were interested in this, if they've gotten this far in the podcast and they're interested in free birthing, you've recommended a book. What other resources would you recommend? Can they reach out to you?
So I have coached a lot of women into home birthing, but unassisted birthing, I've only one woman, and she was a friend of mine. And the reason I say, so yes, I can be helpful. And I, just like any other coaching I do, and in this topic, I have a lot of information, valuable, practical things that women can do, and how to change. I mean, how to literally not have morning sickness. I have not a physical trick, it's an emotional trick. I mean, and I'll tell you about that in one sec here. But yes, I definitely can be helpful and coach people to be able to do an unassisted birth. However, I don't recommend it for most people. And it sounds interesting because I've done it 4 times. I sound like yes, this is amazing, and this is what all the things I'm saying support that this should be a normal way to operate in life. And even though I believe all those things, I always ask people when they come to me and say, I want to do unassisted birthing. Do you think I can? And I said, well, no, because they're asking me, do you think I can?
Oh, they have to already know.
Yeah. And I say, I'm saying you could get there. I don't want to be responsible for that decision.
Right.
That's a huge decision.
That is on you. That's right. That's got to be on them.
Yeah, I didn't train to be a midwife where come over. I'm gonna help you birth this baby.
Well, and the truth is there are midwives out there, and this is what they do. They help you from conception to...
But I did have a friend who came to me and said, I want to do an assisted birthing. So tell me all you know. Tell me, give me any resources you have. And I said, wow, I feel like that's cool. I feel like I can get on board with this. And she was more of a friend, not a client. She sort of became that. But I did give her all the resources. And in the end, she said, I actually think I'm going to have a midwife. Mm-hmm. But she ended up having, a midwife. But her birth did feel... She said she felt so empowered by even just looking at the choice of home birthing or unassisted birthing. And it led her to feel more empowered to have a home birth.
Well, see, that's what I think this interview is going to do.
Yes.
I don't think 9,000 people are going to go have unassisted births. I think what they're going to do is go, whoa, she just pushed the goalposts back. If you can do that, obviously I can do it at home with a midwife.
And I'm also not saying, I don't want to come across as, oh, well, I did this. I'm the only one who can do this. Or no, people do this. It's just, it takes that level. This is a major decision.
It takes a certain personality.
Yeah, and it takes a certain level of certainty. And you may be certain about something else in your life. There may be something else you're certain about that you can do that I wouldn't be able to do. But in this area, I know I can, I know I will, and I'm very certain. And so that's why when people come to me with wanting to have natural births, home births with a midwife, it's easy for me to hold that space because I have this other container I have clearly constructed and can do and successfully and feel confident. So it's very easy.
So what coaching do you do?
Yeah, so basically, as far as specifically in relation to
coaching and healing, now we can talk about birth all for hours.
Yeah.
And I want to, but I also want to, I'm just curious about you in general for what else what is it that you bring? I know you do great body work and healing work. What else?
Yeah, so I started, and I'll reference this because it's very relevant to where we're going. When somebody handed me at the same time the Sacred Birthing book, and somebody else who was a more practical friend handed me What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Oh, I wasn't even going to mention that book.
But
that's the book you don't want to read.
Yeah. So I had both books in my hand, and I opened that What to Expect When You're Expecting, and I went, what is this?
Fear,
And
fear.
I mean, man, I'm going to shut that down. And then I started writing a book called What to Create When You're Expecting. I haven't published it, but it's nearly done. And that's what my coaching is about, essentially, what to create when you're expecting. But all my coaching, you're creating your own life. There is a destiny component, and then you allow your intuition. You have the ability to tap into your intuition simultaneously and be guided. Now, what gets in the way of that is obviously your mind chatter, your fear, your insecurities, your past traumas and situations that get in the way of you seeing clearly and even really knowing what you want to create. And when you don't know what you want to create, and when you can't tap properly into your intuition, if you're constantly questioning, is this intuition, or is this just my fear talking, or should I do this, should I not? I mean, that even my friends who come to me, who say, I keep getting this thought, and I can't figure out if it's my intuition, or if it's fear, if it's because I feel it's fear, or is it like really something in my heart that's speaking to me? And these are people, and I get it sometimes, these are people who are trying to discern, and I have the ability to help people discern, where is this coming from? And how can we get you back into a space where your intuition is speaking to you and not just your mind chatter, and not both, because it sometimes can be both and it can get confusing. And I help people process unresolved issues. So if there is past traumas or current traumas or, childhood traumas or whatever that looks like, or experiences, maybe people don't even identify with things they've gone through as trauma. Maybe it's just an experience, but it has left an imprint on them that isn't allowing them to sort of move forward and accomplish the things that they're wanting to accomplish, because now they're insecure because of this thing that happened, or these 5 things that happened. So it's essentially identifying, these things that are holding people back, getting to the root issue, dissecting it, bringing things to light that they may not even see that's there. And this is how I work with people I coach in the birthing process too, in the pregnancy process. I do the same thing because, I'm fearing this, okay, let's go back to where this began. Because this didn't just start today. You didn't just suddenly, this is my fear. Everybody has their own set of fears. And then you have the projections of society that feed those fears. So then you have to separate yourself from that.
And see, fearlessness is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had to, I say that, and then I have my own fears. I'm not fearless, but that's my goal.
Yeah.
And to step into this world, and the older I get, the more fearless I become, because I'm like, the clock's ticking, and so I love when I feel fearless.
Yeah.
So if you're creating a place where people heal where their fear is coming from and step into their fear and through their fear and get beyond their fear, that's a huge healing.
Yeah, it's not about telling people what to do. There are moments I have, these sort of, I call them intuitive hits or guidances, or, and okay, you should do this. This seems like a really good idea for you right now. And here's what I feel. But it's really about having people be able to tap into their own intuition and their own guidance and understand, what is next for them and how they can process energy and how they can move through that energy.
You're teaching a man to fish.
Yeah.
You're not giving him a fish.
Yeah,
you're giving him the process. That's amazing. I know you're a healer.
Yeah.
You were going to tell us how to not have morning sickness.
Oh, this is, okay. I did not have any morning sickness with my first, hold on, I take that back. The middle 2, I did not have any morning sickness with. The first, I was resisting having a baby. So I've met other people in this situation who've said, I can't believe I'm pregnant. How did I, and they're like, I'm so sick. I have so much morning sickness. I have so much. And I'm like, interesting. And so I had those same thoughts. And then it got me thinking when I initially had the first, whoa, So what's happening when you get pregnant? This is the spiritual thing that is happening that I know to be true. There's this baby now that is entering into your energy field, and you have your energy. And if you're misaligned with that pregnancy, or you have misalignments for whatever reason, and you're not syncing up with the baby, you will get more of those symptoms. And I am proof of this.
And nausea is what your body does that when it's trying to get rid of something.
Get rid of unprocessed energy. And so I became so aware of it. And both pregnancies that I had this happen with, I did the same thing, and it instantly resolved. And so the morning sickness came right away. And so it wasn't like, oh, now I'm 4 months pregnant or 3 months. Oh, that's just the first trimester. I feel so much better. It was nothing like that. It was, okay, I have this discomfort. And then I'd feel, am I aligned with my baby? That's the question I would ask. I had it with my fourth because that was a big surprise. Fourth was a big surprise. I felt done after the third. So now I'm having this fourth, like unresolved. Oh my gosh, I just got through this stage of baby and like, I feel so good being free, there was these different things. So first one and then the last one, both I had misalignments. Middle two, I didn't. And the minute I said, oh man, I'm not connected to this baby's field. I am operating in my own frequency of fear, judgment, criticism of all these, that's how it felt. And I went into a state of surrender, and I went into a state of love for this baby that has chosen me. What? This baby chose me, and I chose this baby. And I went into that joy, surrender, joy, peace. Morning sickness completely gone.
Interesting.
Completely that day. And it never came back. Both pregnancies. And I think I may have been 6 weeks into Jaden's or 7. And then Aubrey was even a little tiny bit longer because there's a lot of.
Okay, so this is your theory.
Yeah.
Have you told women this and had experiences?
Yes.
Excuse me, where they've.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If they truly do what I say, and they want to see their imbalances. Because you have to, in any work that I do with people, and any of the any coaching work, any healing work, you have to want to see. If you don't want to see, you're not going to look, and then you're not going to resolve whatever issue that is that's holding you back, or that's creating morning sickness, or, my theory is everything's energy. Everything comes back to your alignment, your energetic field. And so if there is misalignments and you're not wanting to look at them, of course you're still going to have morning sickness or whatever. But yes, there are tons of people that I said, hey, do this. And I even said, this is a part of one thing I would do. Okay, you're having this. So, okay, a client of mine, okay, let's sit down. We're going to do a meditation. We're going to connect to the baby. And then that's also a way, if you can't do it, okay, let me facilitate it then. Let's get into a space of connecting.
Everything you've said about creating a baby and being in alignment with it is a metaphor for creating our own lives.
Yes.
And being in alignment with that.
Yeah.
Because it's all, like you said, it's all energy, and we're creating it. And if we recognize what's causing misalignment, I love that word.
Yeah.
Misalignment. Whatever's creating, there's so many words that could, strife or just imbalance or angst.
Yeah.
What is creating it? You have to want to look.
Yeah.
And then you have to want to heal. And you are creating your life. Mm-hmm. You're creating this baby's life. And I just found that parallel, the way you were working with yourself on that. And how do you want it to be? And you're going to create that with your thoughts, your energy. And if you are thinking in terms of, it's going to be great and I'm making this happen, and not being in a place of fear, but you have to recognize it. You have to recognize most people don't even know they're walking around in fear.
Yeah, you have to want it. You really do. And I'm going to reference, there was this, many people watched it, The Secret. You know that documentary. And
The Law of Attraction.
The Law of Attraction. There was a key thing, in my opinion, missing. I mean, I'm not gonna, but there was a key thing missing in there, and that they didn't talk a lot about your state of being. And one of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks, she continually talks about your field, your energetic field, your alignment points. Where are you operating from? Are you at a lower frequency, a higher frequency? And that, to me, when creating reality, is the most important thing. Yes, you need to know what you want. Being clear about what you want and releasing the things that are keeping you from what you want. Yes. But then to create what you want, putting yourself in a space where your vibration is at a vibrational match with what you're wanting. You know, and that's the same with pregnancy. That's the same with birthing.
Right. Well, and I love this, because now we're talking my what I love to talk about, and that's creating your world. And if you aren't creating it on purpose, you'll create something and wonder what happened. How'd I get here? Because and so if you don't know, you have to know what you want, and a lot of times we don't. And so then you have to figure out what you want, because you've got this life and it's creative. So. And
what's interesting, and I just thought of this, is, you know, if people are listening and they're like, oh, I want to do a home birth, but my husband won't let me. Because I've had people who have said that, and I'm just, what do you mean? It's your body. Like, my instinct, you know, but it's not.
No, if he's in a place of fear about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is I've worked with couples on this. And I mean, there are the ones that don't want to look, you know, like, and then the wife just says, you know, it's easier just to let it be and go to the hospital and whatever, you know, I'm just.
Then I don't even have to fight him.
Yeah, you know, but if they can, and this is where even working with couples on this, understanding, getting on the same page, you know, when Gabriel and I created our birth plan, my husband and I, we created the energetic field. And that's an interesting, a lot of people may not even interact with energetic field. What does that mean? It's the tone of how we want this box to look. And we did it together. And that's something else that I love facilitating in, whether it's birth or it's how people want to set up their relationships.
Or their lives.
Together.
What do you want our future to look like together? How should it feel?
Yeah, because you come...
Yes.
Yeah, you come together and you have your own, okay, this is my set of, you know, opinions, this is my set of this, and I have these visions. But what does that look like together? And some people can organically flow, and even though sometimes when you're organically flowing, there are these edges you hit and with each other, and then if you work through them, that's amazing. But you know, if you don't, then you have to both become very real with where you're at and where you're wanting to go and how to create that space of going together, you know. And so
there's healing that happens just there, just sitting with someone and choosing your co-creative path together.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to say? We're going to have to wrap up. What anything else we missed, or that you feel like you'd like to share with people who are interested in what we've been talking about?
It's important to go into birthing and choosing your birthing plan in a conscious way. So if you are choosing a hospital birth, and that does feel what's best for you, and you're choosing an epidural, you're choosing, you know, to create some numbness in your body, or being aware of why you're choosing it is super important. And this, you know, this gets into a bit of a different conversation, but just to know, if you're whatever you're choosing, being aware, allowing yourself to ask the question of why that's your choice. And if it is your choice, and it's still your choice after you look at it, whether that's home birth with a midwife, unassisted birthing, you know, a hospital birth naturally, a hospital birth, you know, with intervention of some sort, a C-section, a planned C-section. I've met many women who have had planned C-sections for convenience sake. you really, I would say, allowing yourself to see why you're choosing what you're choosing. And then sort of tapping into your heart, giving a moment to be connected to your baby, and feeling into if that is still the right decision. Instead of just making choices because it seems like the normal thing to do, or it seems
or what
like
everybody does.
Everybody's doing it, or a doctor, heaven forbid, a doctor saying, I'm on vacation, so this C-section needs to be this week because,
it's convenient for someone else. Right?
Yeah, not because it's convenient. Yeah. And don't be afraid to push your edge in this area. If you're thinking, oh, maybe I can do a home birth, and, push it a little bit, allow yourself to think outside of that normal box of how birthing should look or shouldn't look. And if you've had a birth that was amazing at home and it was with a midwife, and now you're going, oh, I want to have this unassisted birth, but boy, that seems scary. All you need is to make the decision and allow the pieces to fall into place. And I mean, call me.
Yeah. I love it. The only thing it said over the oracle at Delphi was, know thyself.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hitting on, because it's not just what do I want, but why.
Yeah.
You said the why. Why am I making these decisions? Why am I choosing there's an airplane. I'll let it pass. And I just want to thank you for that, because I don't think I've ever thought of that before. I've thought of what do I want a lot, and I know that I'm creating it, and that's wonderful. But I don't think I've thought why. And that's where the juice is.
Children ask why all the time. And I mean, my 4-year-old consistently asks why. And I actually love that question.
But I never thought, okay, I knew I wanted a home birth, but I guess on some deep level I thought of why, and it was because for me, I have more fear of being in the hospital than I do of being at home, and being at home looked awesome, but I never thought, this is why. Well,
and that's what I touched on also, is at first it seemed like it was the fear, of the hospital was greater, and so, but that after I started thinking about it, the choice was already made. I already made that choice of unassisted, but then I started looking at why. But then getting too caught up in the why at the wrong time it can also set you back from your journey. So it's like knowing the whys in the right moment.
Yeah. At the beginning, I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? Yeah, and then moving forward on your journey with your...
But I stand and I sit and I walk in the knowingness that we can all have these miraculous, beautiful natural births if we're choosing it. We can have whatever we want. We can be screaming and dancing and singing outside and birthing, or we can be inside in a tub and having an orgasmic birth, or it's anything is possible. I stand in that.
Well, and the other thing is, babies, there are still births. Yeah. And it happens in the hospital. It happens at home, and it could happen anywhere. So I think also being okay with the part that fate plays in our lives.
Exactly.
I mean, we're choosing most of what happens, but some of it we don't, and for whatever reason.
I'm so glad you said that. I have one thing I felt that I didn't say. I trust that I'm guided. So if in any given moment, as long as I feel connected to my body, my spirit, my heart, my everything, it feels balanced, I know I'll be guided if I needed to go to the hospital, because something was telling me inside that, yes, you need to go. I knew I would be guided to the next steps of what I needed in each birth. And in that moment with the last birth, that's the reference point of do I want to go to the hospital? Do I need to? And when I felt my body, I picked that card in that moment. I felt my being. I was guided. Okay, you need to start walking.
How did you learn to trust that intuition so much? Where did you get that? Because that's what people who are listening to this are going, well, I want to be guided.
I had it as a child. Most people do. Most people have. When you're this pure, infinite being, you're an infinite being of potential. You have this ability to see and feel clearly, and then you get completely bombarded with other people's emotions and projections and understandings, and you start to learn, and you start to then filter things through different lenses, and you actually lose what you already had, right? So this is about keeping a clear mind.
And it's that intuition, and I feel very intuition, like I trust my intuition.
Yeah.
But I think to help people develop that.
Well, there are different tools. So if I'm feeling off and I don't feel clear, because everybody gets a little off, anybody, whether you're teaching how to be on or off, or everybody, I mean, I teach people how to stay connected to their intuition. So if I'm feeling off personally, I become super still. Sometimes, and sometimes I cry, and sometimes I scream. Whatever my body is trying to release in that moment, I choose to release it. Or I choose to go inside and become super still and let the internal process take place. So I'll do a guided meditation. I generally know myself well enough now to know when I'm disconnected from my source, from my being, from, some people say God, from God, from source, from your higher self. And how I get back there determines the choices I make along that way. So that's why I guess that to go a little bit back to what you were saying, the tool, everyone's different. And that's why it's important to, once again, know yourself. So in those moments, when you feel disconnected, do I need to scream and release energy because I'm feeling disconnected? Should I go for a walk and hear the birds and feel the wind? What is going to put me back into inspiration? What is going to connect me back into inspiration? And then you're
intuiting that though.
Yeah.
You're saying, okay, what is it I need? Yeah. Yeah. So you're so good at that.
It becomes natural, but ultimately if you can still your mind, so meditation is a good place to start. If you can still your mind in that moment, or you have a coach you work with, or you have a friend, or you have, you can process some energy with, and they can help guide you, I think this would be a good idea. And then suddenly you do that thing and you feel so much better. And then you're back to your source. You're back to center. You're back to your intuition. You're back to your inner guidance system.
Breath work. I just thought of that.
Breath work. Mm-hmm. I mean, and meditation is for me breath work. Yeah. It goes hand in hand, but stillness, if meditation seems like, some people say, well, I can't even still my mind. Like when I'm in that space, how do I even get to a place of stilling my mind? And so this is where your breath work can come in, and you focus on your breath. You put on music, you listen to sounds, and you focus on your breath and the sounds, and you bring yourself back to center. And there's many times, and I'm laughing right now inside because the other day my daughter, all of them actually, one was talking this way, the other child was doing this, the other child. Man, did I feel disconnected from everybody. I said, okay, and I do this sometimes. Everybody stop. I need to breathe. And I can't hear you, so you can keep talking, but I need to breathe. And so I took my 4 breaths and I just connected into those breaths and said, okay, go ahead. And I was back to
It
it.
took 1 minute for you.
Yeah. You know, so a lot of times you become out of balance because there are these exterior things happening, you know, external things happening that help to create imbalances, you know. And alone time is so important that way, where you take your time. And that's why it's like, oh, well, take your time, your 20 minutes to meditate. Sometimes it's not even about the meditation. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's you're disengaging and you're connecting to nothingness. Well, is walking going to do that for you? Then go for a walk. And, you know, feel the earth. Feel Mother Gaia. Feel whatever elements around you that are going to bring you back to center. Mm-hmm. Everything's about bringing you back to your source, bringing you back to center. And then your intuition is much clearer.
I am so grateful that you came on today and shared all this with me and with anyone who is listening. So I will post in the show notes how people can reach you through your website.
Sure, yeah. I have 2 websites. One's really geared towards mothers and understanding my journey. So my full birth stories are on there. And, you know, the sort of the understanding of what I can offer people, which I already touched on. But the other website is more just for anyone, you know, to reach out to me. You don't have to be pregnant, you know. It's like, if you're wanting to get pregnant, if you're, you know, people have come to me they wanted to get pregnant, and, you know, we saw the misalignments, and then next thing you know, they're pregnant because we dealt with those misalignments. So
people find you who are looking to heal.
Yeah.
And create something in their life that they're missing. And there's probably some type of a misalignment. There's that word. I love it.
Yeah, whether it's in a relationship. I mean, I've had so many couples I've worked with and actually did immersion experiences with that I helped them understand and see each other and themselves, separate and together. So yes.
Thank you, Krisztina.
Oh, thank you, Betsy.
And be sure and subscribe. The channel is still in its infancy, and that every subscription, it just means so much. And I intend to keep bringing people on who push our boundaries and make us think outside of our boxes. So I look forward to seeing you next time.
We're in the light.
Yeah, it came on.
I feel
butterflies and birds. Ciao.
I live better than a king ever did. I live